They're not that funny. They're not that good at sports. They're, just like.
So you checked out my YouTube page? All right, that's what's up. Thanks. How would you describe Palestinians?
Very hospitable, family-oriented, but we have drama too. We love to eat.
Bamya is the one food that I'm like really.
Are you pro-Bamya?
Oh, 100% pro Bamya. Love Bamya.
Wow, I hear that's a controversial
so
subject.
Anti.
There is a very serious split on TikTok, pro and anti-Bamya, by the way.
Really?
You cannot like Bamya.
It's hairy. It tastes like
people
hair.
Have,
it's
see,
furry.
this is where
slimy.
It starts. Okay, so this is where we start to have problems.
Is this Bamya slander that we're hearing?
There could be a lot of reasons you don't like Bamya. It's a preference. Maybe you have a genetic disorder. Maybe there's some other reason. But if you don't like Bamya and you're Palestinian, my message to you is this: just shut up about it.
Palestine Pod.
Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Palestine Pod, the weekly podcast where we break down the latest headlines dealing with Palestine from all over the world and bring you stories, commentary, and interviews with the aim of spreading awareness about the Palestinian struggle for justice and equal rights. I'm one of your hosts, Lara E. You may know me from Instagram as @GazanGirl, and I am joined by my co-host, Mikey B.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Mikey B here on TikTok and Michael Schertzer on Instagram. Mikey Intifada if you work for the IDF's Informational Warfare Division.
We are so excited about today's show, but before we get into it, please take a moment to like, comment, subscribe. We're also super excited to let you know that you can finally find us on Spotify and Deezer and the other podcast apps. You can also find our full-length episodes at PalestinePod.com. And what's really great about our website is that for every episode, we've actually put a complete list of all of the sources that we relied on in the preparation of that episode. So if you hear us refer to a statistic, a fact, any quotes, or a book on the podcast, and you would like more information, please do check out our website. We list everything for you right there.
We got resources, baby. We got them sources. Come through. Get them sources. Damn, y'all got a way bigger bookshelf than I do. Y'all got maybe 50 to 75 books a piece.
That's just what's in the living room.
All right, you don't gotta flex. You don't gotta flex your additional books. All right, I'm making a point that I've only got like 4 or 5 right here, and I thought that was a real sweet setup. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, these 4 or 5 books are gonna kill them. You know what I mean? And turns out you need a full library to contend with Palestinians.
For sure. We read a lot. All right, so let's get into it. Today we have our first guest on the show, lawyer, comedian, law professor, and community organizer out of Dearborn, Michigan, which is the heart, of course, of the Palestinian-American community, Amer Zahr.
How are you, sir?
Wonderful. How are you guys?
Good. Pleasure to meet you.
Really, really good.
I do have a lot more books.
Oh, man.
Since we're doing this.
Dang. Dang. Both of y'all just had to flex your extra books on me.
I'm just, well, we went to law school.
Yeah, no, okay, I get it.
Yes,
No, there's levels to this. I get it.
Yeah.
So, Amer, welcome to the Palestine Pod.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you guys for having me, Lara and Michael. I'm very happy to be here with you.
We are very excited to have you here. The main reason is that you are, in a way, a mashup of Michael and myself, in that you are a lawyer and a comedian all at once. And you sort of exemplify the reason why we wanted to make this podcast. We wanted to stay sharp on the facts and the law, which is why we prepare a bibliography for every single episode that we do, but we also wanted to keep it lighthearted, and we really value jokes and banter. We realize that we can't ask people to come spend an hour with us every single week if we don't give them a reason to laugh. If we just, make them depressed, the situation is dark enough, and we feel like we have to sort of present the reality with a side of humor. So we want to get started by asking you first how it is that you feel that you see humor and what its role is in your work. Do you see it really as a way to educate the world about our story? Is it a way to heal trauma? Is it simply a form of artistic expression for a type A, very logic-oriented lawyer brain? Is it all of the above? What's your experience been with that?
And shouts out to the way she phrased that question like a lawyer. You know what I mean? That was like a 17-part question. You're under deposition right now.
For sure.
This is how you learn. This is how you learn things in law school. Everything happens. Is it or in the alternative, or in the alternative, or in the alternative? You know, and you're hoping to get some information. She's just trying to get information. She doesn't want to answer. She
Just
wants
want info.
You know? Yeah. Well, look, comedy is all of those things. To give you another lawyerly response, is that a lot of times in front of crowds that I have that are Palestinian, yes, it's therapeutic. You know, they are releasing some of their pain and anxiety through the stuff that I'm doing on stage. For crowds who are not Arab or Palestinian, it's educational. For young kids, it can be inspirational. You know, at the end of the day, it's the tool that I use to impart my experiences and my worldview. Some people use poetry, some people use song. I use comedy. And it's not foreign. The notion of using comedy is not foreign to situations that might seem on their face to be, I don't know, tragic or sad. You know, comedy, I write in the foreword to my book that, you know, you can see somebody laugh so much they start crying, but you can also see somebody cry so much they start laughing. And so these emotions are connected somehow. You know, the extreme of one of them leads to the other. And so I you know, I've had Palestinians at my comedy shows, you know, they're laughing and then they start crying. And I don't mean crying because they're laughing too much. I mean crying because of like sadness, and then they start laughing again. I mean, I don't know if that's good or bad, or that just means Palestinians are messed up. Are we allowed to curse on the podcast?
We need therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's absolutely
I don't know if that
rules.
just means we're generally fucked up. I think we are. You know, I mean, you know, we don't have PTSD. We have PTSD, like it's present traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
It's still happening. And, you know, that is something that lives within every Palestinian. We have the weight of our ancestors and the weight of the stuff that's going on today. And so that is sort of like a perfect setting for humor. You know, it's not that people sometimes think it's the opposite. It's not. It's a perfect setting for humor. And then sometimes people say to me, you know, because I'm a comedian and I'll always use humor, and they say, well, I never know if you're being serious. And my answer is, I'm always being serious. Like comedians who know what they're doing, we don't use comedy to just joke around. We don't use comedy to lie. We use comedy to tell the truth. You know, use humor to tell the truth. So just because you're joking doesn't mean you're not trying to tell the truth. And so, you know, it just has worked out for me as something that in the beginning as a form of communication came a little natural to me, but, you know, technique wise, it took, you know, years before you figure out how to use it correctly on stage, you know, and that the technique is just as important as the sort of willingness to get up on a stage. But no, to answer your question, comedy can be anything to anyone, as long as it's coming authentically from the comedian. I think it can be very effective.
Yeah, I think some of the best comedians exemplify what you're talking about. Richard Pryor, George Carlin, Jimmy Dore, you know, those type of comics who speak truth to power.
I think like white guy comedian is the hardest job in the world, because I mean, like what
I was just going to say, because they have no trauma.
Well, what is there to talk about?
Thank you so much for saying that, honestly.
Because I mean, I'm not saying that as like a sign of respect. I mean, I don't really know any good white comedians. I mean, I know like a few good white male comedians. There's like 3.
Okay,
I can point to.
All right.
But Michael, you don't count as a white guy comedian. You're Jewish. You have trauma. So there's no, you know what I mean? Like, it's not the same as like a settler, colonial, European.
It
you know
depends
what I mean?
what setting he's in. I mean,
if the cops pull me over, they're not going to be like, he's a Jew. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
no, I mean, Ashkenazi Jews are basically white in America.
Exactly.
Except in some of except among obviously white nationalists, they're not. And obviously in certain white circles, they're not. But the people of color, you know, they basically are. But no, I mean like white, waspy,
Yeah.
comedians, like, I mean, what, it's just the hardest job in the world. I mean, what is there to talk about? So they end up talking about, like, observational, like, hey,
Yeah.
have you ever seen when somebody goes to the mall and they want to go into a store and the salesman just comes right up to them, and that's so annoying. And you're like, okay, dude, I mean, all right. I mean, I guess that's interesting.
Shots fired at Jerry Seinfeld.
I mean, actually, Jerry Seinfeld is the only one who's good at that. He's good at it. Okay. But there's like a million of him that try to do it that are not very good at it, and it's just not interesting. Mm-hmm. And Jerry Seinfeld's jokes, like, I think Jerry Seinfeld's funny. Part Arab, by the way, Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah.
I think
really?
Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, his mom is Syrian.
I got the ambulance.
Yeah.
My nightly ambulance.
They're coming to take my. They're coming to take
ambulance.
my body away because you just deceased me on this pod. He said, white male comedians, all of you.
Does it follow then that the less trauma you have, the less funny you are?
Well, you guys are underestimating my trauma because I didn't get everything I wanted for Hanukkah. You know what I mean? So
I'm sure it was difficult.
I had some tough times.
Yeah, but you did get our land, so that's not.
I've never been to Israel for moral reasons, but yes.
Well, there's no such thing called Israel. But in any case, okay. I mean, Israel is an idea. It's a government. It is a movement. It's an ideology, but it's not a piece of land.
I've never stepped foot in Palestine.
There we go.
Out of protest.
There you go. Look, I mean, the Zionists called it Palestine. Does everyone who's ever studied Palestine has always seen that poster, that Visit Palestine poster that was. This was a Zionist propaganda tool to get Jews to move from Europe to Palestine in the 30s. So it actually was created by them. Mm-hmm. But anyway, this is a different thing to get into. Akhaduha Mafroosheh. This is a different thing.
We're going to get into all of this.
It's a different thing to get into. But
Michael's been practicing.
I did. I watched your video numerous times.
But yes, white male comedian, I think is the hardest job in the world because it's just, I mean, what is there to talk about? What is there to talk about?
They talk about relationships a lot.
Yeah, but I mean, how anyone can do that. I mean, it's. I just don't think it's that interesting. There's not that many good ones. Like, so for instance, Bill Burr. I think Bill Burr is an amazing comedian. Bill Burr, though, talks about politics and race. It's very hard for a white comedian to talk about race. By the way, he's got to be very careful. Bill Burr is very good at that. Louis Black, who is a white comedian, but he only talks about it's all politics and the government and criticizing. George Carlin. Criticizing the government, that kind of comedy is not observational comedy. That's political comedy. That's satire. But most white comedians are doing, observational comedy. It's just not that good. But hey, being white is amazing because they get all the Netflix specials and they get all the Comedy Central specials. They end up on TV, disproportionate amount of the comedy specials and the Netflix specials and all that kind of stuff with, so-so comedy. But I mean, this is the beauty of being white. I mean, it's just, the standards are a little lower. And, I wish I was, are you kidding me? Sounds amazing. It sounds so amazing to be white. I mean, you can just enter the Capitol building and nobody says shit to you. You just walk in.
They open the door for you.
They help you out.
10,000 of you, and they let you. And you've already told everybody that you're there to overthrow the government. Like, they already know you're there. It wasn't.
You made a Facebook event. Yeah.
Yeah. This was not some undercover operation. Okay. Everybody knew what was going on. They were there to overthrow the government. Like, this was clear. Everyone knew what was going on, and they opened the fucking doors. I mean, I'm just imagining to myself, like, if there was 10,000, 30,000, I don't know how many, tens of thousands of white people. If it was like 50 Arabs, we wouldn't have even made it to the Capitol steps,
If it was like 2 Arabs.
Oh my, we would have not have made it to the Capitol steps. We can't even say the word Capitol.
Yeah.
Okay, we can't even say it. All right. Like, if they stop me at TSA and they're like, "Sir, what's your name?" Amer. Can you spell that? Capital A-M. Sir, what did you say? Did you say capital? Can you please step to the side over here? You have the right to remain silent. And we can't even say it. And they're out there. They told everybody what they were doing. They told it, and they just let him in. It's unbelievable. And they let him out. They let him in, and they let him out. And then everybody went home. Okay, and then they got some pressure, and they started arresting people. But I mean, if it was up to them, they wouldn't have arrested anybody. It's just, white. What'd they say about that What'd they say about that guy that killed all the people in Atlanta the other day? Killed all the Asian Americans.
Had a bad day.
Cop came out and said he had a bad day. Wasn't there a song? And
you had a bad day.
I forget who sang that song. But I mean,
We'll
it's
play
like,
that in the intro.
Yeah, we'll put that in. Although maybe not, because it seems disrespectful. I don't know.
can you imagine? I mean, can you imagine? Had a bad day. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's white America, or those in power who are exercising racism and discrimination over others, also want to be the ones who decide what's racist and what's not racist. Like it never. I mean, shouldn't the victims be deciding what's racist and not racist? Not the perpetrator. I mean, this is ridiculous, but this is whiteness is unbelievably awesome. It just seems like the most amazing thing. Trump and Obama is the best example of this. Okay. I want you to imagine, okay? I know we're on a podcast, people are watching this video. I want everyone out there. I want the two of you. All right, close your eyes. Close your eyes. Close your eyes.
Okay,
close your eyes.
Here we go.
Close your eyes. Close your eyes.
Closed.
I want you to imagine that when you heard about Barack Obama back in like 2004 or 6 or whenever he first hit your radar, okay? I want you to imagine that when you heard about Barack Obama, you heard about this black man who wants to be president that had 5 kids from 3 women. And he cheated on the first one with the second one. And then he cheated on the third one with a porn star and then paid her $130,000 to shut the fuck up about it. Okay, now you can open your eyes. Okay, now, if this was Barack, you would have never heard of Barack Obama if this was Barack Obama, okay? He'd be getting people off parking tickets in the south side of Chicago in his little law office. That's all he would be doing, Barack Obama. But that is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is that dude. Do you understand? Do you understand how amazing it is? Okay, Barack Obama had to be like the perfect black guy, okay? Like like Barack Obama is like the Mitt Romney of black people, okay? And he became president. And Donald Trump is like the Flavor Flav of white people, and he became president.
So true.
Okay, I mean, do you understand how awesome it is?
Yeah, Flavor Flav was president.
White Flavor Flav, flavorless Flav, we'll call him flavorless,
Unseasoned
flavorless
Flav.
Yeah, unseasoned, bland Flav.
Blanched Flav,
Yeah, exactly. Became president.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, though. We did have a Palestinian brother. I need you to recognize on Netflix, Amer. He's a Palestinian brother. He had his
right.
Netflix special out.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we have every.
We have one guy.
Of course. The number of white guys. The number of white Mo. Do you know how hard Mo worked? Do you know how many times he had to open for Chappelle? Do you know how many times? And the material he did on Netflix, he had worked on it for years and perfected it. And then, there's mediocre white guys with specials all the time. I mean, Mo's not mediocre. Mo's a very established, renowned, awarded comedian. And then he finally got one Netflix special.
There are a lot of
And there's like white
men
guys with a bunch of them.
Yeah.
who have gotten things that they do not deserve in comedy, undoubtedly. And comedy is an industry that has been unfair to people of color, undoubtedly.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the only industry unfair to people of color. I mean,
Right.
like, mediocrity among, this is why white people are so afraid of like equality because they're pretty mediocre. And so, the competing with others is
it's easier to oppress. It's easier to keep people down than it is to compete on an equal playing field.
And they're not good at it. I mean, they're not good at it. They're not that funny. They're not that good at sports. They're, just like...
So you checked out my YouTube page? All right, that's what's up. Thanks.
So,
cool.
they just,
I didn't know. I figured you might not know who I was, but clearly you did your research.
I mean, you
appreciate
think
that.
you think white people didn't know that black people were better at basketball? They knew that. That's why they tried to keep them out of it for so long.
Separate league.
Yeah, I mean, you think they didn't know they were better? The baseball players in the Negro leagues were hitting like 60 home runs and had no hitters every other day. Like they didn't want them to play with them. It has much less to do with racism than it has to do with like, dude, I don't think I can compete with these people.
Bro, have you seen how he dunks? Like,
yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, no, we cannot let them play.
I'm going to have to learn how to shoot a 3. What are you talking about?
I mean, dude, they let one guy play golf and it fucked up golf for like 25 years. I mean,
I think they just took him out recently. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they
exactly.
were like, we're done.
That might have been a conspiracy. I don't know. They might have messed with the GPS and the Hyundai.
These cars these days, you know what I mean? You could hack them from
you
Tel
can hack
Aviv.
for sure. So I mean, it's just like, they can't compete. They can't compete. And the best comedians if you look at it again, the best comedians in America are comedians of color because they're talking about their pain. And by the way, as an audience, we expect that from them, right? So if there was a black comedian on stage and he didn't talk about being black, you as an audience member would feel like you were being deprived of something. Like like, why isn't he talking about what he is? White comedians don't really talk about being white because we don't. Not only is it maybe not that interesting, but it's also, as an audience, we don't expect that. We don't want that because we don't really, there is no, I mean, not much good comes out of expressing white pride, in America. Right. And also there's not much pain to it. We want to see pain, right? As an audience, you want to see authenticity. As a comedian, I've learned that when you get on stage, you have to immediately get yourself into the mindset that you are talking to a room full of your best friends. And so you're going to have to immediately share your deepest, darkest secrets with them. And so your level of vulnerability has to be through the roof because they actually want that. And by the way, the crowd, 99% of the time, wants you to do well. I mean, look, they're there for a comedy show. Sometimes they've even paid money to see you. So they want you to do well. They want to have a good time, right? And they want that level of experience of feeling some sort of journey with you. And so as a comedian, you have to be willing to be very honest and very transparent and extremely vulnerable with your audience and tell them your deepest, darkest secrets, because that's why they're there. That's why they're there. And that's the deal, and using humor along the way. That, to me, is the essence of comedy. That's why it lends itself very well to Palestine, very well to Palestine. Talking about that pain and being vulnerable about it, and using humor to impart that. It'll hit the audience in different ways because whether they're Arab or Palestinian or white or Jewish or it'll hit them all in different ways. But it all comes the same. It's all the same delivery from me. I don't change my delivery or what I'm doing based on who the audience is. There might be some material, some jokes that I know will hit this audience a little bit better, or there might be some Arabic involved in it, so it can only be in front of this audience. But my delivery is not the same. I don't soften it for anybody. It is just who I am all the time because that's the deal. The deal is I'm getting on stage to tell you my deepest, darkest secrets. You're going to go along this journey with me, and hopefully by the end of it, we both feel a little bit better. That's the whole idea.
Were you a lawyer or a comedian first?
I never practiced law. I started doing comedy while I was in law school. And then when I graduated from law school, I said to myself, let me try this comedy thing. And if I fail, I'll go become a lawyer. So that's a good
backup plan.
Yeah. In the beginning, I graduated from law school and then I would start. So I live in Michigan, which is like, the Arab Disneyland. It's the largest Arab community in America. And so there would always be Arab events around here. And then also Chicago's only a 4-hour drive and also a huge Arab community. So basically I would call up organizations around here that were having events. And I would say, this is like 2005 or 6. And I would say, hey, you guys are having an event. Would you like a comedian? Okay. And if they would say yes, then I would go. And sometimes I would drive 3 or 4 hours and go do a show and come back, and I would do it for free. So I could start to get my name out a little bit in the community. And because, I just needed to practice, I just needed to, because as Michael knows, there is no experience or practice other than actually getting on a stage and having actual live people in front of you. Because until that point, you don't know if you're good or not. I mean, you can, if you play an instrument, you can just play a recording of it and listen back to it and say, okay, let me fix that. If you sing the same thing, but comedy is different. You need live people to see how this stuff is hitting. So I did that. And then eventually, and I was just working odd jobs to make ends meet. And I was living in very low rent places. I had a law degree. I went to one of the top law schools in the country. I was like, you know what, let me try this thing. So then somebody paid me $50 for a show. Then somebody paid me $50 and dinner. And then they would give me like a hotel room. And then somebody paid me $100. And then I started asking for money. And the first time somebody handed me a check for $500 for a comedy show, I was like, man, I am going to be rich. Amazing. Because I was like,
how's that going?
Because I was like, I'm gonna do like 500 of these a year, and this is what I'm gonna do. So, but now, fortunately, I get paid a lot more than $500 a show, but Arabs still don't totally understand that it's a profession. So like I'll go to a show. I'll do a lot of community events. So let's say it's a banquet for like some Arab organization, and I'll go do their event. And at the end of the event, the guy who organized the event will hand me a check, let's say for $3,000. Hand me a check. He'll hand me it, and while he's handing me a check for $3,000, he'll say, "So what's your real job?" I'm like, dude, you just gave me $3,000. This is not my pocket money. This is my job. And they still don't totally get that. But it is.
Do your parents get it at least?
When I bought a house and a car, they got it. Yeah, when I bought a house and a car, they got it.
Yeah, people see results.
My mom. Yeah, well, immigrant parents and Arab parents especially they're very results oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Your job is two things: prestige and money. Okay, this is the idea. Okay, now the prestige thing, I don't think I've convinced my parents of that yet on the comedy front. Although, when they walk around Palestine with me and people stop me and want to take pictures, my parents start to be like, "Oh, okay, maybe
that's
maybe
cool.
Maybe some people are following him," and like all that kind of stuff. Or they see that I get hundreds of thousands of likes or views. They go, "Okay, people," and they'll. Like somebody shared your video with me the other day. I'm like, all right, thanks. And because they're in all of these WhatsApp groups, just like every other Arab mom and dad. Luckily the financial part of it, if you hit enough in comedy, whatever it is, and you're lucky enough to make a living from it, there's really no better life.
The first time I saw you was at a NAMA lunch, I think, in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And this was like many, many, many years ago. And I forget the year. But but I do remember that you made a joke. And I still remember this joke to this day about how every Palestinian mother tells people that her son is a doctor, even if they just have an MBA.
Oh, no, it's worse than that. I say, it's worse than that. I tell the joke, I say Arab moms exaggerate a little bit. So you ask an Arab mom, "What does your son do?" And she says, he's a doctor. And I say, "Oh, okay, cool. What's his specialty?" "Well, he does not really have a specialty." "Oh, okay, cool. Where does he go to medical school?" "Well, he does not really go to medical school yet. He is 11, but he's going to be a doctor one day,
Right.
Little exaggeration. Just a little exaggeration.
Yeah.
We Arabs, we exaggerate about everything except Palestine. We have not exaggerated about that.
That's all true.
That shit is true. Okay, but we exaggerate about a lot of other shit.
That's all true.
All Hasbro is gonna do is clip the part where you said we exaggerate about everything.
That's right.
I am the black sheep in my family because I am the one lawyer out of all doctors, and I was a huge disappointment to my family by doing that.
And I'm the one comedian among lawyers.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, I was saying, that is something that is not understood in our, we understand professions that are, for some reason, Arabs, they value the professions that are like globally transferable because they figure, we're all going to move back one day, and maybe we will. So like doctors transferable, engineers transferable, but lawyer isn't. They never thought lawyer was. Now they're getting into it more now. They
Side note, I did literally transfer it because I practice in France.
Yes, that's right. But they just don't. They don't see that, and so now they're getting more into the lawyer thing. They're understanding it. Like maybe we need more lawyers, need more journalists, need more artists. And that's just a function of a community being here a little bit longer. I mean, doctors are Arabs who made their parents proud. Engineers are Arabs who disappointed their parents in some way or another. Lawyers are Arabs who confused their parents. They're like, why do you want to be a lawyer? We don't understand. You're going to help the drug dealer. Like, this is all for some reason, everything always comes back to drug dealers. Somehow you're going to just help the drug dealer get out of prison, no, it doesn't matter what everything is. If I show my mom, I have a lot of cash in my pocket. She goes, "So you're a drug dealer? No, you're a drug dealer." Everything, for some reason, they're obsessed with drug dealers. They just don't understand things, but it's obviously changing. So now here in Dearborn, all the best lawyers here are Arab American, and we have a plethora of talent. But the first immigrant parents, they didn't get that. It was own a business, become a doctor. You own a business, your kid become a doctor. That's the pinnacle. That's the mountaintop. And a lot of people did that.
But I think Palestinians in particular have this fierce obsession with education. We do have one of the world's highest literacy rates. We are education obsessed. And I think it's interesting to see how even in the diaspora, we have really maintained that commitment to maintaining education as a priority.
Palestinians are the smartest people on planet Earth. There's no question about that. We have more PhDs per capita than any other people on planet Earth. And, what is the explanation for this? Is it that we're just, genetically smarter? Is it that we are related to Jesus? Is it like any of these things? And, no, I don't believe in any of that. I'm not, I don't believe in like eugenics or anything. I don't believe in that. But I do think it is because we don't have plan B.
Yeah.
Like, most Palestinians who, because we're a refugee population around the world, there was not this notion of like, okay, I came to this new country and if I fuck up, I can go back home. Didn't work like that. They had to make it work. And so this sort of is like proof of human potential, that if people are really pushed to their potential and they push themselves because they know there might not be any other alternative, they really can achieve anything, become PhDs and doctors. I mean, it's like, we're sort of proof of that. And we work very hard. And we never go on vacation. It's a direct product of our refuge and dispossession. And also part of Akhaduha Mafroosheh is we also happen to be a pretty intellectual and educated society before Israel came in and took our land.
Right.
There's this notion that, the Arabs were just a bunch of peasants and farmers. And that's not true. I mean, yes, we had peasants and farmers, but the people that were kicked out of our major metropolitan areas like Jaffa and Haifa and Akka and Lid and Ramli, and a lot of these people were educated, intellectual. My grandfather, my dad's parents were both teachers. Okay, my mom's dad was an agricultural specialist whose job it was he was educated in agriculture, and he would go to Arab villages surrounding Akka and help them figure out their like agricultural strategy for the season. I mean, we're talking about an educated civilization, and this is another reason they have been very bad at just like getting rid of us, But a lot of it comes out of the necessity as well.
So let's talk about Akhaduha Mafroosha, because that's really the main reason why we wanted to have you on today. You made this video last summer. It went viral. Akhaduha Mafroosha literally means that they took it furnished in Arabic. And of course, it's referring to the Zionist takeover of Palestine, which goes beyond the ethnic cleansing, land theft, and theft of physical buildings like houses, businesses, and infrastructure that was carried out by the European Jewish settlers in Palestine, but it goes even deeper into the theft of the indigenous Palestinian culture, our food, music, language, to the renaming of streets and towns with new Hebrew names, and also the theft of Arabic words. So can you tell us a little bit about the idea for the video, what its reception was like? Was there anything that surprised you about how it was received? I myself, when I saw it, I laughed and I cried and I laughed and I cried again, because I just felt all the emotions all at once. I felt so sad, but I was so amused by how you took such a deep history and so many different layers of cultural and physical theft, and that you just condensed it into like a few minutes.
Yeah, well, thank you, first of all. And look, Akhaduha Mafroosheh is something that my mom has always said to me and said to us, it's Akhaduha Mafroosheh. My mom was born in Akka, in the old city of Akka. They had a house right in the old city. She was literally born in that house. My grandfather, like I said, her dad was an agricultural specialist. He worked in that city. He was born in that city too. And they were uprooted. And from an urban area. And so now when she goes back, she sees the same city, because Akka, especially the old city, has been pretty much unchanged. Modernized in a few ways, pretty much unchanged. But, but many of the people displaced and replaced with other people. And, this is the definition of Akhaduha Mafroosheh. Israel is a lot more than ethnic cleansing, which is a terrible thing in and of itself. It was ethnic replacement. I mean, they literally moved into our grandparents' houses.
Literally.
Yeah.
It's not like, how when a white girl says literally and it's not literally, literally.
I was literally blacked out.
Yeah, how when they say I was literally gonna die. Like, no, you weren't. But no, they literally are living in our houses. I mean, like fucking literally. Like I didn't include this in the Akhaduha Mafroosheh. So I watch a lot of TV, because as Michael knows, comedians watch a lot of TV, and we really don't have much to do otherwise. So I watch a lot of TV, and there's a show on TV called House Hunters. Ever watched the show?
Yeah.
Sure.
House Hunters. It's a half-an-hour show, and they will bring somebody on who's looking for a house, and they're with a real estate agent, and they look at a few houses, and then they pick a house, and this all happens in half an hour. They look at 3 houses, and they pick their house. Okay, so I'm watching this this show one day, and House Hunters also has a spin-off version of House Hunters called House Hunters International. Okay.
Wow.
So where now they're not just looking for houses in America, they're looking for houses in other parts of the world. On comes the House Hunters International Jerusalem.
No.
Okay. House Hunters International Jerusalem. Yeah. And she comes on the show. I forget her name, but she's a nice Jewish lady from New Jersey. And she's wants to immigrate to Israel. And so she's looking for a house in Jerusalem. Okay. And they have her going around, and she's looking in West Jerusalem mostly. And so there's these different parts of West Jerusalem called the German colony and called Akka and all these places. And, so they would say, now she's looking for a house in Akka, which was a pre-war neighborhood. Whatever the fuck that means. I don't even know what this means, okay? But a pre-war neighborhood, which is, there were all these euphemisms for Palestinians used to live there. Okay,
Yeah.
all these different ways to say Palestinians used to live there. She would walk in and she would say, "Wow, you walk in and the windows are arched, and there's the original like Arab style tiles on the ground." And she would say, "Wow, these windows are so authentic, and this is the original tile." And I'm watching this thing and I'm like, man, I know the motherfuckers who used to live in this house. Like, I know who used to live in this house. They live in like New Jersey now. Like, I know who they are. They live in Orlando. Like, I know this family. And it was just so nonchalant and so, I mean, and they would just say, this house was built in the 20s. Yeah, well, who fucking built it? Who built it?
Who was there in the 20s?
Yeah.
And just this complete, complete erasure of who we were. And so this happens all the time, right? Where Palestinians have to sort of prove and reprove that we were there. Mm-hmm. We were there and we lived there and we had this long civilization. And so like in the Akhaduha Mafroosheh video, I use this example from the show Homeland.
Yeah.
So I watch Homeland, which is a show about the CIA chasing terrorists around the world, and different seasons, they're different nationalities, but in the first few seasons, they were Arabs. And they are chasing this Osama bin Laden type character named Abu Nazir around Beirut, okay? And I'm watching the show, man, and I'm like, and I really like the show, okay? I mean, I understand it has a lot of like racist undertones, and it's really, but I kind of like the show.
Super problematic and
super
racist,
problematic, but
CIA propaganda, basically.
Yeah.
Good TV.
But I mean, it was like good TV, good acting, so I watched it. So I watched it, and so they're chasing Abu Nazir through the streets of Beirut. That's the story, okay? And I've been to Beirut, okay? And I'm watching this episode, and I'm like, man, this is like. I'm looking at the scenery. I'm like, man, I was there. I mean, this looks amazing. And then after the show, I'm thinking to myself, man, it is so weird. I can't imagine how they let an American show about chasing an Arab terrorist into Beirut to film. Like, the Lebanese government did this. Doesn't make any sense. So after the show, there's like a behind the scenes feature in the like they have those DVD extras. So there's like a behind the scenes feature on Showtime right after the show, and the producer comes on and goes, we're shooting this Abu Nazir Beirut scene, and of course we couldn't get into Beirut, so we went to Israel and we shot this in Haifa. Okay. And I'm like, oh man. And so and he even says in the thing, we were looking for a city that's on the Mediterranean, and he says literally with an Arab face. And so, it just like, it means if you call up the Israeli film ministry and you're like, hey, we need an Arab looking city, they're like, yeah, we have 3, 4. How many do you need? Do you need just one? We have many of these, like, because there was fucking people there. Okay. There are people there.
Yeah.
And they sing our songs and they eat our food and they say our words, because again, this whole land without a people for people without a land. This is a fucking lie. This whole like we made the desert bloom. This is the AIPAC thing.
And then they say that we came afterwards.
Right. And we're the foreigners.
Hey, let me tell you something about Jews. We don't really do manual labor that well. You know what I mean? Like, we're not really like outside people. I get like skin cancer and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and say that like, that's not us.
Yeah. I mean, it's really unbelievable. And, I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist. Okay. So I don't know if this is on the part of Zionists. Do they willfully and knowingly know that they're lying and it's just working, so they keep doing it?
No.
Is there some sort of like delusion there?
No, the 100%.
They believe it.
At least the early generation knew. I mean, you have the quotes of like Moshe Dayan saying that we replace every single Palestinian town with an Israel, with a Hebrew name. There's not a single Arabic name that remains. I mean, they were very express, at least in terms of the early Zionist leaders, about their intentions to ethnically cleanse the land, to remove the Palestinians. They didn't hide any of this stuff.
100% though. And
the early one definitely knew.
I get online, I make videos that are anti-Zionist, and I get these 14-year-olds who come into my comments and they're like, Palestine never existed. And I'm like, you're not an authority.
No, like, do you know what my mom and dad's favorite line was when we were growing up?
Because I said
at our
so.
House? No, it's even better. Listen, you have to understand, Palestinian parents, especially educated Palestinian, because everything's about politics. You don't get simple answers like, because I said so. That's not how, this is my parents' answer all the time. They would say, they're talking about our house. They would go, we came to America, and America is a democracy. This is not a democracy. Talk about our house. That's what they would say. So there was always like an educational and historical element to everything they did, even when they were telling us to shut the fuck up. We live in a beautiful democracy. This here, not a democracy.
Did they define the political system that existed in your house?
Yeah, exactly. They're very clear that it was a dictatorship. Or they're very clear what it was not. This is not a democracy. Right. But Mom, I think, you think, out there you think. Here, not a democracy. Everything with Palestinians is always elevated. It's always a little elevated because 70 years fucks you up. 70 years creates a lot of fucked up psychological problems.
Let's talk a little bit about the reception.
Yes, the reaction.
Yes, tell me about the reaction.
Well, I mean, reactions came from all over the world pretty swiftly.
Yes.
And look, I try in my comedy to express the feelings and sentiment of my people from my point of view. It doesn't mean I'm always right, but it just is like my experiences from growing up with my parents and my grandparents and hearing all these stories. And, reactions came from all over the world. I think within a couple days, it had a couple 100,000 views. And then, it got up to, between Instagram and Facebook, it got up to like 1.5 million pretty quickly. And it was being shared everywhere, and it was being quoted on Arab TV and that kind of stuff. And look, I knew when I made it that it was probably one of my videos that would hit a little harder, because it really was coming at a specific time. This was like Israel was talking about annexing the West Bank. There was all kinds of stuff that was going on in the summer, but I didn't think it would hit that hard. I just didn't think it would hit that hard. And the reactions were, from Palestinians, it was like, thanks for telling our story. From other Arabs, the same way. And then, of course, you get your regular hate mail from Zionists who are like, Palestine never existed. It was
the British. To that 14-year-old too?
Yeah, exactly. It was the British who built everything. It's very similar to American white denial. Yes. Very similar, right? So, when we grow up in this country, if you go to school in America, you learn a whole chapter in American history called Manifest Destiny.
Yes.
Okay? Which is manifest. Okay, Lara, let's do a law school thing where we break down what words mean. Okay, so manifest as an adjective means obvious. Something is manifest, so it's obvious. Destiny is something that God wants you to do. Okay, and so we learned in school that it was obvious that God wanted white people to expand west as much as they could, no matter what the cost. Okay, sounds like pretty religiously fundamentalist stuff to me. I mean, it sounds like some ISIS, like some WISIS stuff. Okay, but and we learn about it in school like it's normal, like totally normal. Okay, we learn about the Trail of Tears as like a blip. You know, even slavery is a blip in American history. The evidence of that delusion of so the delusion of white people is that they always think they were there first.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what they always believe. They always think they were there first. And, you know, that's only true in like Europe. You know, like it's not true anywhere else. Okay.
People
it's not
came
true
from
in America,
Africa, but white people are the origin.
Yeah. It's not true in America. It's not true in, you know, like when you see, like when I see French people and British people being really xenophobic and racist, I'm like, man, that is fucked up that they're racist. And then I'm like, you know, but at least they're from there.
Yeah.
You know, like I look at French people and British people, I'm like, well, yeah, they're really racist and that's fucked up. But you know, at least they're from there. You know, at least they're like, when they're like, no one should come to my country, they're like, at least that part is true. Right. You know, like at least they're from there. But white people are not from here. Like they're not from here. That's why they do ancestry tests. Okay, because they're not from here. Because they're trying to figure out where they're from because they forgot. Okay, so they're not from here, and the evidence of that is still around everywhere. So, like, you know, just like Palestine. So again, you know, Palestine, people that you have Israeli Jews living in places that have Arabic names, or they just changed a letter to make it sound Hebrew, but these are all Arabic names. And in America, so you know, like in America, we have 50 states, and only like 15 of them have white names. And they were all named after shit in England anyway. New Jersey, New York, New Hampshire, or named after kings and queens, Maryland, Georgia, Carolina. Okay. All the rest of the states have Native American names or Spanish names because they already had fucking names. Because guess what? In America, Akhaduha Mafroosheh too. Okay. Yeah. So, you know, everything had a name. Okay. I mean, you know, people think the most racist state in America is Mississippi. That's a Native American name. You know, like white people, Davy Crockett and all these motherfuckers, they went to all these places. They found natives and they're like, what do you call this place? And the natives were like Tennessee, Mississippi, Kentucky. And they're like, all right, well, then that's what we'll call it too. It already has a name. Okay.
Sounds good.
So, you know, so you guys call it that? Okay. And that's how lazy they were. They don't want to come up with names. I mean, they were so lazy. They didn't even want to come up, you know, Southwest America's all Mexico. Okay, California, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado. These are all fucking Spanish names.
Baja California.
You know, I mean, there's only one place, I guess, that they felt were lazy. They didn't want to name it, so they said, okay, we'll call this one New Mexico. Okay, that's how lazy. That's how lazy they were, and you still see it to this day. The delusion. I mean, imagine the delusion it takes for Donald Trump to stand in Texas and say Mexicans should not be allowed to live in a place called El Paso or San Antonio, or they can't come into California and go to San Diego. They named those fucking places. Of course they can live there.
Did y'all see the recent video of an Israeli guy in Oakland telling an Asian person to get out and go back where he came from?
Right.
It's like everybody in the comments is like, bro, where's your accent from?
Sometimes I think to myself, man, it's hard to be a Zionist, man. It's really hard. I mean, okay, you got the guns and the tanks and everything, but I mean, you got to come up with new shit every single day. Like, I mean, it's not that you don't have the truth. You know, it's pretty easy to be a Palestinian. You know, you're just like, okay, you learn a couple things, you learn what your grandparents tell you, that's the truth. And like, you know, okay, you just keep saying it. This is, by the way, this is why we're really bad for the most part at like political organization and media and like informational campaigns and propaganda, because it's not that we're not smart enough to do those things. It's that we just go, but we're telling the truth. Why would we have to do those things?
That's so true.
But we're telling the truth.
This is all true.
But you know, then other people, but then you're like, no, I know we're telling the truth. Yeah. But we got to amplify it. We got to work on it. We got to message it and package it. People are like, I know, but it's the truth. This is something that is like, it's just the Akhadhua Mafroosheh thing is not just Palestine, you know, but Palestine is still the one living example of it, where the people, unlike unfortunately natives in this country, where the people and the culture and the history has not been totally erased yet. And so we can still do something about it, and we can still highlight it in a way that's sort of temporary. I always tell people you don't have to study apartheid and Jim Crow and all that kind of shit in history books. You just go to Palestine. It's like the living museum of all this stuff. I mean, it's like there. I mean, like they literally have different roads for people, and they literally have different buses for people, and they it's like fucking literal. It's not hyperbolic. It is actually happening.
It's a literally that I won't have to edit out.
Yeah, right. So I mean, this is the idea of Akhaduha Mafroosheh, an expression of our civilization and our culture. And I'll be putting out another video soon that's all about Jesus and about how he's Palestinian, and trying to put an end to this discussion and this debate.
Thank you.
Talking about that, and that'll be a little bit longer video. It'll be a short movie because I couldn't stop writing the script when I put it together. But hopefully it'll be interactive enough where people don't get tired of it. But it'll probably be like 8 or 9 minutes long. But it'll all be about why Jesus is Palestinian. And
we need that video so bad, because I put that up during Christmas.
Yeah,
Jesus is Palestinian, and I just got flooded with the Zionists.
Oh yeah, no, they freak out. It's funny because here's the funny thing about, and this goes back to Akhaduha Mafroosheh, is that all the time I say Jesus Palestinian. I mean, my book is full of references. Jesus Palestinian. He was a freedom fighter, fought against occupation. He's very Palestinian in that way. And yes, they did call that land Palestine when he was living there. And they called it other things too. Okay, they called it other things too. Some people called it the land of Israel. Some people called it Canaan. Some people called it whatever. Judea, Samaria, that all these different names. But Palestine was one of the names. It was used in Herodotus's history 400 years before Jesus. Okay, so it was one of the names of the land. And, things can have a lot of names. Like, I think Sean Combs has like 5 names,
Easily.
And, he has all those names at the same time, and he answers to all of them. It's no big deal. Things can have a lot of names. It's not a big deal. Okay. Isn't it funny how Zionists never gave a shit about the history of Jesus until we Palestinians started saying he's Palestinian.
Bingo.
Then they lost their minds. He is a Jew. Yes, of course. We all know that. Everybody understands that he's Jews. Guess what? You can be Palestinian and Jewish. It's not a big deal. Okay, you can be both. And no, but he wasn't Arab. Yeah, I know he wasn't Arab. There weren't Arabs back then. I'm not saying he was Arab. I'm saying he was Palestinian. Yeah, but he was Jewish. We already went over that point.
Right.
We already understand. There are still native Jews that live in Palestine today.
Yes.
Yep.
But whatever. Okay, like shut up, dude. I mean, but by the way, if you look at the history really simply, I mean, they kicked out, there were Jews living in Palestine. By the way, when Jews came to Palestine, even if you think the Bible is a history book, okay, when the Jews came to Palestine, guess what? There was people there. There's stories in the Bible about the people they battled who were there. You know what some of their names were? Philistines. Okay, it comes from the word Palestine, Philistines, it's all related to each other. Philistines, Canaanites, these people, like they were there. Okay, I mean, it's like unbelievable. And like Jerusalem was a city before the Jews got there. Yeah, they built it, but it was even before the Jews got there in the Bible. Okay, and so like the notion that there is an exclusive right for one group of people over the land of Palestine is a total delusion. Man, it's delusional, and this is all is about Akhaduha Mafroosheh, and here's the big thing for all the Zionists that might want to listen to this thing. Jews were in Palestine for a long time, and then the Romans tried to kick them all out, and they kicked a lot of them out after the Bar Kokhba revolt. This is like in the year 130 A.D. They kicked a lot of them out, but they didn't get all of them. Okay, they didn't get all of them. There were many Jewish tribes and communities that remained in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, and especially in the northern part of Palestine, Galilee, and even some in Jerusalem and the surrounding area. They didn't leave. Okay? They stayed there. Jerusalem was cut off to them for a long time. Then the Muslims came in the 6th and 7th century. They actually opened up Jerusalem back to the neighboring Jewish communities that were there. Okay. And then a lot of those Jewish communities over time became Christian, and then either remained Christian or some of them became Muslims. Okay, which means what? Which means the descendants of the original Jewish tribes of Palestine are a group of people today who call themselves Palestinians.
Bingo.
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, like, what the fuck are we talking about at the end of the day? I mean, people want to go 3,000 years ago. That's my Shimon Peres accent. He always Shimon. Everything was always deep, and they say R like French people. 3,000 years ago. Like, what are we talking about here? Well, this is why we always then go back to talking about Israel is not something about Jewish history, or it's not something. It is simply a European colonial white supremacist project. By the way, there's been many like it in the history of the world. It's not that unique, okay? And it's a settler colonial project, like America, like the French in Algeria, who both came to very different results. Okay, and it's not the first time. It's like South Africa, like Australia. This shit has happened a lot in history, and sometimes it works and they stay around, and sometimes they don't. But colonists are never totally happy where they are. This is why the Israelis. I don't know if you've ever been to Palestine. I don't know, Lara, if you've ever been to Palestine.
I have. I went once.
Well, when you go to Palestine, you first of all, in Jerusalem, the old city of Jerusalem, which everyone says is the center of the problem. Arabic is still the language you speak, okay? If you don't want to get like cheated in the store, or you just want to like get a hookup somewhere, it's been the lingua franca for 1,500 years. I mean, like 70 years of some foreigners from Europe has not changed any of that. In Akka, especially where my mom is from, okay, you walk on, and Akka now is part of Israel, and so when you are walking on in the harbor of Akka, and
Yep.
something that always pisses off Palestinians whenever we're there is we see like a million Israeli flags. Okay?
Yes, I knew you were going to say that. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Okay.
That's
like
exactly
every
it. They put flags in between
there's
flags.
A flag.
They put flags in the water on rocks.
Oh.
There's flags in the middle of nothing, and it's a very creepy psychological reality where you become acutely aware that the Israeli knows that he is a foreigner in that land.
Right. I used to, when I used to take it personally. I'm like, man, they put up all these flags to piss me off, and and then I said, you know what? No,
it's for them.
Those flags it's for them. Those flags are not for me. They're for them, to remind themselves that they belong there. So they put up these flags. Okay, that's right. This is where I'm from. And so they put, we don't need that. We have our names, and we have our food, and we have the names of our villages, and like we have our history, and my grandmother tells me about it. I don't need a fucking flag,
No, I can tell you where my grandma was born. I can tell you where my great grandma was born. I can tell you information going back generations, and I'm sure you can too.
But yes, those flags are for them.
Yes,
for them, and that's what I realized. I mean, this, and then as much as they try to like, but eventually the land swallows you up. Like the culture of the land swallows you up. So, like, by the way, in the 60s and 70s, Israelis were not singing Arabic music because they were still trying to be European and all this kind of stuff. The whole Arabic music thing is pretty new in the past 20 years. I mean, they start having like fucking concerts in Jerusalem, outdoor concerts where they're singing like Farid al-Atrash and Kulthum and all these like classical Arab shit. Because, guess what? Guess what? They're right smack dab in the middle of the Arab world. I mean, hey, what are you going to do? Eventually, the culture eats you up, all right? Because you weren't able to get rid of everybody as much as you tried. And so eventually, guess what? The land speaks Arabic, so they start speaking Arabic. The land sings Kulthum, so they start singing Kulthum. The land eats hummus, so they start eating hummus. You can try, but eventually the land overtakes you. And this is what's happening. I mean, in that Akhaduha Mafroosheh video, I showed the video of the Farid al-Atrash song and then a Jewish singer sing it side by side. I mean, it's like creepy when you see them next to each other.
It's
like, this is what they do. Yeah. This is what they do. I mean, if you're in Palestine, which is like, a half-hour flight from Cairo, the sort of center of Arab art for the last 100 years, that's going to be your center too. You can't pretend. I mean, they can pretend, like Israel tries to like, they play in like the European soccer leagues and they try to like be part of like the European cups and all that kind of stuff. Like, okay, I mean, you can play that game for a little bit, but like when you actually come home and put your head down, you're not in a land that is speaking, German or French or Russian. You're in a land that is speaking Arabic. you know, that she's asking you like when you're going to get married, and she's bringing you lemonade that's too sour, and she's like, you know, doing all the shit that Arabs do. And that's just the way it is. I was in a bus in Jerusalem a few years ago, and I was on a bus from Jerusalem to Nazareth, and I looked out the window, and there was these two older Jewish guys, a car, okay, two white European Jewish guys, and they looked like they were having a conversation with each other, okay, and they're having and while they're having a conversation with each other, they're throwing their hands in the air, yelling and screaming, and they're eating sunflower seeds, and they're throwing the shells out the window. And I said, these people are becoming us. This is they're becoming us. They didn't do that shit in Romania or Hungary or wherever they came from. That's not where they didn't do that shit over there. They did that here.
Yeah.
Here. They learned that here. Like, come on, man. You can Akhaduha Mafroosheh, but eventually, because guess what? I mean, like, again, Akhaduha Mafroosheh means fully furnished, okay? And it, you know, it's also something we say like when somebody is going to buy an apartment, you know, or rent an apartment, we say, are you going to rent the apartment mafroosheh or mish mafroosheh? You're going to rent it furnished or not furnished? And if you rent a furnished apartment, guess what? In the beginning, the couch is there, and you're like, man, I wouldn't have bought that couch. Maybe, you know, I don't really like that couch. But guess what? You take a few naps on that couch. You find out that it's pretty comfortable. Your body starts to conform to the couch. You know, you just start chilling on that couch. Maybe you start to have, then you have sex on the couch a few times. You know, like now it's your couch. Okay?
Yeah.
Your couch, even though that couch was there way before you. And then you start talking like that couch, defending that couch, even if you hated that couch. Like, that's it. It's part of you now. You really can't do anything about it. That's what's happening to them. And eventually, I guess, I'm not a psychiatrist, eventually it's all going to come to a head, I guess, where they like, you know, or maybe they'll just eventually become us. Maybe like the whole solution to this shit is going to be like, oh yeah, I guess we're Arabs. And they just like eventually become, you know, just sort of like Arabize themselves. You know, I don't know, but they're definitely becoming us because Akhaduha Mafroosheh. There is consequences to the Akhaduha Mafroosheh for them too, which means you're going to become one of us eventually.
Yes.
Example of sort of absorbing and even like monetizing native culture can be seen in the United States, where, you know, I'm a white settler colonialist. I know that. And so like I see, like, for example, the Redskins, obviously, which, by the way, there are videos of white settlers dressed in native attire talking to native people, telling them why it's not offensive. You know what I mean? Shouts out to those people. There's other like products that were native words that we sell now as capitalist icons, like the Dodge Dakota, a Jeep Cherokee, Toyota Tacoma, Ford Apache. Those are just to name a few, but the list goes on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Course.
For sure. I wanted to go back to the food thing, because I think that's the thing that keeps coming up over and over and over. This idea of an Israeli cuisine, which has been taken from Palestinian cuisine. I did a little bit of research into what the Zionist encounter with Palestinians was when the first wave of Zionist immigration to Palestine, the early 1900s. And there are two researchers, Ranta and Mendel, who are from the UK and Israel. And they describe that a phenomenon whereby Arab-Palestinian food culture was marginalized, blurred, and reinterpreted as belonging to the Zionist settlers or as being brought to Israel by the Mizrahi Jews. So, of course, you're familiar with this, Amer. They always say this. They say, oh, no, well, the hummus isn't from you guys. It's not from the Palestinians. We took it from the Mizrahi Jews who were, you know, in the Middle East. They were in Yemen, Iraq. But the reality is, of course, these are foods that did not actually even exist in the countries where the Mizrahi Jews came from. But they try to sort of blur the lines and say that it's essentially anything but Palestinian.
Mm-hmm. And even in their lie, they admit that they took it from someone.
For sure, because even if it was Iraqi, even if it was Yemeni, that wouldn't make it then Israeli. That's another form of erasure that would be happening. But the reality is, it isn't even those things.
First of all, you're right. I mean, those, you know, cuisines are regional, and, you know, Morocco and Yemen are far from Palestine. And guess what? They eat different food. Okay? They eat different food, and, you know, some of it's similar. But I live here in Michigan, where we have Lebanese restaurants and Yemeni restaurants, and guess what? The experience is very different if you go into either restaurant. Okay, so they eat different foods, but this is a very elevated, or maybe not that elevated, version of like I have a black friend. This is what they're doing. They're doing like, we have Arab friends. They're the ones who brought that. Like, but it's really, again, it's not that hard. Go to a Israeli hummus place in West Jerusalem, and then go to a Palestinian hummus place in Ramallah, and guess what? They taste pretty much the same. And guess what? The Ramallah guy's been there for 200 years, and the Tel Aviv guy just got there. So you figure it out, because they are copying our hummus. We're not copying their hummus that they brought from Yemen and Iraq. I can tell you that. They're copying the food of the land, and of course they are. And they use this Israeli couscous. We have a word for that in Arabic. It's called meftul. Israeli couscous. I mean, they are repackaging things and coming up with any sort of way to do it. But again, it's the land eventually just takes over. This is the food the land was putting out for hundreds, thousands of years before you got there. You really can't do anything about it. So the most you can do is pretend like you invented it, or maybe some of your Arab friends that you brought over, who you didn't really want there in the first place, by the way, who you brought over, invented it. But yes, you're right, Lara. It's all a big lie. Again, people always, it's amazing to me how people want to overanalyze this shit. It's real simple. It's not that hard to figure out. I mean, it's like, it's to me, it's like always, people always want to overcomplicate Palestine. CNN and National Geographic Channel, they do like specials about what did Jesus look like?
Yeah.
Let's do a whole anthropological thing and figure out what he looked like. Like, dude, wait a minute. We know where he's from, right? Okay, yes, we know where he's from. There's still motherfuckers living there. Right. So you can kind of just go there and see what the people there look like. And, maybe it's a little bit different, but that's basically what he looked like. Okay, it's like basically what he looked. You don't have to do all this but this is the extent people go to erase Palestine, as if like, okay, Jesus was there 2,000 years ago. The Israelis are there today. And like, there was nothing in between.
Right.
And like,
that's the story they try to sell.
Yeah. And, like, that's not true. Okay. All right. This is not that.
Yeah.
I mean,
they love talking about like 2,000 plus years ago, but God forbid you bring up an article from 2004.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
then they're like, that's not relevant anymore. It's like, oh, right. Word, but the Bible is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, I mean, it's unbelievable, the links, but this is what you have to, when you're lying.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Olympic level mental gymnastics.
Yeah. I mean,
that they have to
really
do every day.
have to do all this shit. And guess, you got to respect them. You got to stick to it. You got to stick to it. It's like a guy who lies about cheating on his girlfriend. Like, you got to stick to it, man. You can't, once you start, because the cost of telling the truth is way too high.
It unravels
because
everything.
if you tell the truth, then that's it. Your whole, like, if you're an Israeli or a Zionist, you start telling the truth, then that's it, man. I mean, you're like, the whole thing falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
And it's already kind of falling apart anyway, but the whole thing falls apart. So you got to stick to it. You got to stick to the lie. They're very disciplined. You got to stick to the lie. She was not with me that night. Okay, I was out of town. But your credit card says you were here. I don't care. I don't care about my credit card. That's an error. Like they're trying. Like, have you ever watched Forensic Files? Like, Israelis would lose all the cases on those Forensic Files. But we have your DNA. I was not there. Okay, but I mean,
the prosecutor is anti-Semitic.
Yeah, but we have you on video. No, that's not.
The video's anti-Semitic.
Yeah, I mean, everything. That camera is anti-Semitic. So I mean,
It's like, sir, it's an Israeli camera.
Yeah, right. You got to stick to it, man. They've been sticking to it.
They have been sticking to it. And in fact, these researchers, Ranta and Mendel, they describe how the first Zionist settlers wanted to resemble the local Palestinian peasants, including drinking and eating like them to replace the Arab Palestinians through the appropriation of their local customs. And in fact, these early Zionists actually justified on many occasions this copying of the local customs as a form of return, not only to the land, but to this historical biblical Jewish custom that the Arabs had preserved. So it's really creepy because they're like, oh yeah, so this local population has actually preserved what we are coming back to claim. So thanks for doing that. And now we're going to replace you.
They had to
Right.
pop off the khakis and change their shoes.
So, yeah. So these researchers refer to this as a process of de-Palestinianization. So the notion is that you strip everything of its Palestinianness before you then reclaim it as Israeli. Yeah. So, I mean, I think everything that you said, Ahmed, is so, it's so on point. The one theme that for me is like really striking is this idea that when you're telling the truth, you don't have to work very hard at it. You just say, well, my grandmother made this dish, so that's why I'm eating it. And my grandmother came from Palestine. You know, it's just that it's a real short, you know, story. It doesn't require all these steps. It doesn't require all of this, like, you know, background and history and, you know, going back a million years. So on that note, will you share with us before we go some of your favorite food memories from your grandmother who's older than Israel? Because I always say that our grandmothers are older than Israel itself. And so we take our culture and our identity from them. So why don't you share with us a little bit about your favorite memories from your grandparents?
Well, so my grandmother, actually, my dad's mom, because my grandfather died in 1979, they were in Jordan. She only had my dad and my aunt, and my dad had already moved to America, and then my aunt came to America like in 1982 for a visit, and then she met a guy and she got married here, and so then my grandmother would have been alone in Jordan, and of course we don't do that kind of stuff. You know, we bring our parents. There is no senior assisted living centers, you know, for Arabs. They just come live with us. So my grandmother then lived with us for like 23 years before she passed away in 2005. And she, you know, my grandmother was, my mom's an amazing cook. My grandmother, my dad's mom wasn't a great cook, but there's a few dishes she could knock out. And she loved to make ajje.
Oh,
ajje is like, you know, basically a thick Arab omelet. It's like a frittata. It's kind of similar to a frittata. And
it's like an omelet pancake.
Yeah. And, you know, they, you know, and each grandmother kind of makes it with her own things, you know. And so my grandmother would sometimes put different things in it, but basically it was egg and onion and spices and parsley. Egg and onion and spices and parsley. And this was what she would always either, you know, bring to the kitchen when we were all having breakfast on a Saturday or Sunday morning, or so that ajje would really reminds me of my grandmother George very much. And then with my mom, you know, she used to make all different kinds of stuff. Bamya is the one food that I'm like really.
Are you pro Bamya?
Oh, 100% pro Bamya. Love Bamya.
Wow, I hear that's a controversial
subject. So
subject.
anti.
Well, I mean, you know,
it is
I guess it's not going to work out.
Michael.
Yeah, I guess it's not going to work out.
It's not going to work out.
But
there is a very serious split on TikTok, pro and anti Bamya, by the way.
Really?
Oh, it's like they come to blows. You know what I mean? People are revoking Palestinian cards over this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, Bamya is a staple of Palestinian cuisine. I would go as far. I would go as far as to say that someone who you can not like Bamya.
Yeah.
That's, you know, if you don't like Bamya, that's fine.
I just don't like Bamya.
Okay, that's fine. You can.
It's
not
hairy.
Like
it tastes like
people
hair.
It's
furry.
This is where it starts.
Slimy.
Okay, so this is where we start to have problems.
Is this Bamya slander that we're hearing?
Yeah, this is where we start to have.
Is
problems.
this defamation?
I guess here's my thing. If you don't like Bamya, that's fine. You know, there could be a lot of reasons you don't like Bamya. The preference, maybe you have a genetic disorder. Maybe there's some other reasons you don't.
You know
like
what
Bamya.
the problem with people who don't like Bamya is? They try to convert everyone.
Yeah, but if you don't like Bamya and you're Palestinian, my message to you is this: just shut up about it. Okay?
I'm a Bazela. I'm Bazela, 100%.
Then be pro Bazela. Okay, but you don't need to be anti-Bamya. I mean, you don't like Bamya, that's fine. Just shut up about it. I mean, you know, just keep that as an inside private thought. You don't need to bring down all of Palestinian culture with you because you don't like Bamya. I mean, you don't like Bamya, that's fine. You can not like Bamya if you want to be that kind of person and you want to make those kinds of terrible choices in life. That's
100%.
fine. That's on you.
I'm
But
owning
you don't
it.
need to
I'm
make a
owning
big
it
deal
because
about
you
it.
can't justify the fur and the seeds
Okay, let
and
me
the
just
texture.
let's just make it
Fur?
really easy. Okay, Bamya has a little bit of fuzz on the outside
Yeah.
of it, like a peach.
I'm not wrong.
Like a peach.
I don't like peaches either.
Okay, there's ways that you can deal with this. First of all, you never take fresh Bamya and just throw it into a pot of Bamya. You have to roast off the Bamya. Sometimes you can fry off the Bamya, and
The
this
fuzz. You have
fuzziness.
to fry the fuzz off.
The fuzziness then gets removed. So people, if you're eating fuzzy Bamya, then you're eating from somebody who obviously doesn't know how to prepare
I have
the Bamya,
only
and that's
ever
a different,
eaten fuzzy Bamya.
well, then that's a different problem. Okay, but all these things can be.
I feel like you shouldn't need a manual.
The question is this, quite simply. Okay, the question is this, quite simply. If you care about Palestine and your people, okay,
Don't go there, Amer.
what
Don't go there.
what could be gained?
Michael's loving this.
What
Don't go
can be
there.
gained
is so funny.
by slandering Bamya?
You know
Okay?
what is gained?
you don't
is
like
that
it, you
I
don't like
now, No, here's what's gained is that I now know that you like Bamya. That's what's gained. Is I
See,
kind
and
of
you're making a judgment about it. See, I don't.
absolutely.
Now you don't like Bamya. I'm not making a judgment about it. You don't like Bamya.
Oh,
that's
really?
fine.
You just said I don't like my people.
No.
You just said I'm not trying to help Palestine.
If you by slandering Bamya, if you don't
Do you
like
think the
it,
Zionists have care that I'm anti-Bamya? That might be the one
I
dish
think
they
the
haven't tried to
Zionists
claim.
planted this conversation so that it created a dissent between Palestinians.
well, to be fair, you brought it up.
Point of record, I actually don't believe that I brought it up, but we'll check the tapes.
Bamya is the one food that I'm like really.
Are you pro-Bamya?
We're all having a good time. Have I totally discounted the idea that you're a Mossad agent? Of course not. It's totally possible that you are a Mossad agent. I mean,
It would
now,
be a lot.
Palestinians, we just tend to think in conspiratorial terms. And by the way, we
That's
don't
fine.
have the best arguments. I mean, like, would the undercover Mossad agent be an anti-Zionist Jewish comedian doing a podcast? Probably not. That probably would not be the undercover Mossad agent. The undercover Mossad agent would probably be somebody like me. It's much more likely to be me than it is to be you.
That's so true.
The undercover
But they
Mossad
pretend to
agent-
be us.
Me, but the
Right,
people
they-
suspect me.
Yeah,
They pretend to be us all the time.
They
Yeah.
sent a fucking guy to go be like the defense minister of Syria.
Syria.
Okay, so I
Yep.
mean, that's undercover. So you would not really be actually the best choice. But still, there's something about us that, like, Michael, he's funny, but is he really? Like, it was always,
It wouldn't stop them. They'd still try and put me in there.
Yeah, but then again, the fact that you would not be the most logical pick might be why.
There you go.
You-
Could be.
Yeah.
I mean, all this kind of shit.
Now we're back to it.
Now we're back to you are it. So I mean, who knows?
All right, favorite Palestinian food, Ahmed? Not Bamya. Don't say Bamya.
Bamya.
Let's go out on this.
Okay, I mean, look, my favorite Palestinian food that is
Yeah.
not Bamya is by far matloubi.
Matlouba. Do you like it with bitinjan, with eggplants, or with cauliflower?
So it depends. First of all, I mean, since we're talking about this, matloubi, eggplant goes with meat and cauliflower goes with
Yes.
chicken. So
Yeah.
if it's a meat-based matloubi, then of course I love eggplant with it. If it's a chicken-based matloubi, then it has to be cauliflower. I tend to make it more with chicken and cauliflower because I like the spices that are in the flavor of the bamya. In the flavor of the matloubi, and this
Bamya on the
these
brain.
things- Yeah, sorry. I like the spices that are in the flavor of the matloubi, and
Yeah.
the chicken takes on those spices much better to me than the meat. But I love a good meat-based matloubi. But if I had to take my pick, it would be chicken and cauliflower. Sometimes you throw in some chickpeas. Sometimes you might even throw in a few potatoes. Top it all with toasted almonds or pine nuts.
Yeah.
And then lots of parsley. And that is a beautiful matloubi with a big dollop of hummus. Lebanese on top of
Yep.
it. And Leban. And that is a great dish. But now I'm mixing up all kinds of Arabic food terms because I'm thinking about Arabic food and I'm thinking about what I'm going to do later on. But مقلوبة.
Are you pro shatta or anti shatta?
So I mean, I like a lot of a little bit of spice in my food, but I don't come from the land of Gaza like you do, where they literally put jalapenos and peppers on everything, including jalapenos and peppers. I mean, they put
100%.
shatta on shatta. And this is like, I think they rub shatta on their babies when they're born, just to like,
Do you know
sort
how
of initiate them.
my grandfather eats his meal, his dinner? It'll be like the chili will be just sitting in front of him and he'll just bite into it.
Yeah.
And it's just like he can sit down and eat like 3 or 4 jalapenos and that's just dinner.
I mean, I think this
And
came
it's
out
in
of
between
necessity.
bites.
Yeah, I think this came out of necessity. I mean, I'm sure at one point there was probably just like an abundance of chilies in Gaza, and there was a food shortage, and people had to eat a lot of chilies to get
You
by.
think so?
I mean, yeah, of course.
Was
I
this
mean,
our potato famine?
Yeah, this is how things come about. I mean, like my dad my dad was an UNRWA refugee. Okay, now he has a PhD in a large house and a lot of cars, but he will still like sometimes just take an onion and just like eat an onion like an apple because that's what they had. They didn't have all that other shit. This is why Arabs always try to trick you. They try to trick you, and because Arabs eat every part of the lamb, like literally every part of the lamb. And they try to play mind games with you, and they'll say shit to you like, well, the brain is the delicacy. And I'm like, no, it isn't. Okay. Then they'll be like, the eyes are the delicacy. And I'm like, no, the eyes are not the delicacy. Okay. That's the shit they gave you. That's the shit the butcher gave you for like free or almost nothing because he couldn't sell it. Okay. And you made it work. Good for you. That's a lot of ingenuity and innovation. But you know what the delicacy is? The meat. Okay, the leg, the shoulder. That was the delicacy. That was the shit people paid for. But, they try to trick us, with all that kind of stuff. They're like, when you take the intestine and you really clean them, they're really delicious. I'm like, no, it's okay, dude. Listen, we came to America. We made money. We are doing pretty well for ourselves now. We don't need to eat the intestine anymore. And now you have like well-to-do Arabs in America, and there's an abundance of meat, are like searching grocery stores for like sheep intestine. Do you have any sheep intestine? Because I really would like some, because that is our delicacy. I'm like, it's not the fucking delicacy, okay? But this is what they do. They try to trick you into that kind of stuff. So this is how I think food culture sometimes just comes out of necessity. So I think one time in Gaza, there were just like so many jalapenos, and they said, oh, well, we got to figure it. We can't throw it away because we don't throw anything away. So we can't throw it away. So we got to figure out how to eat all this shit. And, it became a staple of Gaza cuisine. That's what I think happened.
And
that's one of the things that the Zionists did not steal. They were like, we're good on intestine, actually.
Yeah, no, there's certain things they won't take.
But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
And your
My pleasure. And thank you for you guys.
Anecdotes, everything.
Well, and thank you for what you guys are doing. I'm really proud of you. I love you both. Keep doing it in any ways that I can help in the future. You just let me know.
It's the Palestine Pod. Palestine Pod. Palestine Pod. Sit back and relax. Palestine Pod. Palestine Pod. Expand your mind. Palestine Pod.
Is that your background? Where there's like a weed whacker? Or is that maybe a motorcycle? Yeah.
It's probably me.
You got a motorbike
I'm right on the street. I'm right on the street.
No worries. Is your window open?
No. Everything's closed.
All right, cool.
It's just Paris. The walls are made out of paper.
Why is that?
You can hear everything. Because all the buildings are like 1 billion years old.
How have buildings that are made out of paper lasted billions of years? You know what I mean? It's like, what is that? That doesn't even make sense. It's like, the buildings are made of shit. They've been here forever. It's like, what?
But that's what it is. There's no insulation. There's no like soundproof technology.